So Ravens flock, I am like 93% sure that I will not be yelling or ranting in this video. I almost crashed out yesterday after that game, but I took a step back and I said, you know what? This team isn't worth that trouble. They're not worth that headache. I'm gonna move on with my day and go to sleep. And that's what I did. So the Ravens were obliterated by the Kansas City Chiefs. Final score 37-20. It really should have been like 37-13, but Justice Hill with 2 minutes left in the game, he got a garbage time touchdown. And that is an actual garbage time touchdown. I know a lot of people in the Lions game, they called that touchdown at the end a garbage time touchdown, but we literally were one onside kick away from having a chance to push it towards overtime. But that's neither here nor there. We lost both games. It doesn't even really matter. This game was your typical dumpster fire. However, something that we all knew was going to happen, it happened, which was the offense finally had a bad day. More specifically, Lamar Jackson finally had a bad day, because really a lot of aspects of this offense has already been garbage all year, but Lamar Jackson was on fire the first 3 weeks of the season. But we knew eventually he was going to have a bad game. Unfortunately, he had it against the Chiefs, which is a team that he's had multiple bad games against. It's a team that John Harbaugh has had multiple bad games against. It's a team that we as a whole have struggled against for years now. And it is what it is. Lamar, he had a pick and a fumble. The fumble, that's just an unfortunate situation because Tyler Linderbaum, I don't know what he was doing, throwing his shoulder into Lamar's arm, his ball carrying arm. You could argue he's kind of trying to block, but even if you were trying to block, I can't wrap my head around what block do you think you were going to execute at that angle. But that's neither here nor there. And you can't say he didn't see Lamar when Lamar's in front of him, but it doesn't matter. Speaking of the O-line, another day where this O-line is in fact garbage. Matter of fact, forget all of that real quick. We're going to go straight to the coaches because John Harbaugh got smoked by Andy Reid again. This is another masterclass by Andy Reid and another disaster class by John Harbaugh. We go out there, like always, the team looks unprepared, unmotivated, no sense of urgency, just like they always do. No sense of urgency. And it ends up biting us in the butt again. Now, we got off to a good start, but at the end of the day, we also have to remember that, when you're on your first drive, we all know that your first drive, even though it could be a good sign if you score, your first drive is when you actually are, that's when you have your plays scripted out in a certain way. Okay, you got those plays off. Cool. But can you make adjustments and can you make counter adjustments to the opposing team? Todd Monken and John Harbaugh cannot do that. And I've rooted for Todd Monken, but clearly I was wrong about Todd Monken because we're still seeing the same problems we see with every offensive coordinator under John Harbaugh, which is a complete inability to make adjustments, a unwillingness to have hot routes available so Lamar could check the ball to somebody when the offensive line can't hold up, and just laughable play calling and personnel decisions. And I gotta lump Harbaugh into the Todd Monken conversation, of course, because obviously when this many OCs have the same exact problem, clearly that's because this is really John Harbaugh's scheme. This is what John Harbaugh wants to do. From the play calling all the way down to the personnel decisions. This is why we don't have Derrick Henry in these big moments. Do y'all realize that John Harbaugh's dumbass has Derrick Henry in the doghouse? Derrick King Henry. We have King Henry, the greatest running back of the past 10 years. When you look at the past 10, 15 years, Derrick Henry is by far the greatest running back in that time period. Well, there's maybe one or two guys you could throw in there, but for the most part, Derrick is arguably the greatest running back of the past decade. He's definitely one of the last bell cow running backs that we've seen. And John Harbaugh, because Derrick went through a rough couple games with fumbling, you want to now limit his snaps and limit how many times he gets the ball? Are you stupid? Guys, prior to this season, Derrick Henry had only fumbled the ball like 2 times in a 5-year window. One time last year with us, and then one time a while back when he was still with the Texans, not the Texans, the Titans. Yeah, he's having a rough patch. That does not miraculously mean you stop giving him the ball. But again, not gonna rant. This is what we should expect. We saw this with J.K. Dobbins. We saw this with Gus Edwards. We saw this with Mark Ingram. It doesn't matter who the running back is. We've seen this with every running back, where John Harbaugh, as soon as he gets a little nervous, he and whoever his puppet offensive coordinator is, they abandon the run. And previously, years ago, when I had mentioned this very point, people at the time were commenting, defending Harbaugh, saying, well, he just doesn't trust these running backs. And, if we would have got Derrick Henry, then things would have been different and blah, blah, blah. Okay, we got Derrick Henry. You're still running into the same situation. You're still getting the same results. You're still seeing scenarios where Harbaugh is choosing to shoot us in the foot unnecessarily and choosing to punish players for having hiccups. Good players. See, the bad players, they never get punished. Falele is fucking garbage. I definitely have been cursing a lot more recently, but I'm just really just fed up at this point with everything about this coaching staff. And I'm seeing many people finally get on board with the idea of getting rid of John Harbaugh. And again, like I've said many times now, that's the part about people that honestly gets on my nerves. It's a pet peeve of mine when it comes to human beings. Most human beings, they are reactive and not proactive. And because of that, most people, they don't want to accept that a change needs to be made. They don't want to make a change. They don't want to accept a new idea, or they don't want to do anything until it's absolutely too late. They don't want to do anything until it's abundantly obvious that a change needs to be made. Now they're getting on board with firing John Harbaugh. Ladies and gentlemen, I've lost count with how many videos going back for the entirety of this channel where I've said, hey guys, let's fire John Harbaugh. We need to start fresh. We got to move on. We have to move on. Like, I've had this channel for 4 or 5 years? And I've been saying this throughout that time period. And so many Ravens fans pushed back against this. You have some Ravens fans who were viewing this similar to me, but all the Ravens fans out there who agreed with me and said we need to move on from Harbaugh, we were all in the minority on this. We were in the minority. Only about 20% of us were consistently saying this. The other 80% were going crazy, attacking us, acting like we were the crazy ones, acting like we didn't know what we were talking about. People's favorite thing to say when they disagree with your opinion in sports is, yo, you don't know ball, man. You don't know ball. Instead of them trying to actually understand where you're coming from, they just want to dismiss it and say, you don't know ball. But then if you're proven right, none of these people come back after the fact and say, you know what? Dang, man. I guess you were right. And I'm not saying that them coming back would matter because I would have rather been wrong. I would have rather have been wrong and get a Super Bowl. But these same people now they're on board. But the problem is they don't understand they're too late. They're finally asking the right questions, but you're asking it 8 years too late. You know, I'm seeing like I was watching Ravens content creators live stream where somebody called in and they're asking the guy like, "Oh my, like I don't know what to do. What do we do now? What do we do now?" Who was it? Who was it? Who was? Hold on. I'm pretty sure it was like I'm pretty sure it was like Sip to Tally or somebody, but they're calling in like, "Oh man, what do we do now? What do we do now? I don't know what to do." And I'm sitting there, guys. I busted out laughing. I literally busted out laughing. And I'm not trying to be a troll, but I busted out laughing because I'm sitting there and I'm like, dude, you're asking the right questions 8 like 10 years too late. And if you're asking the right question 10 years too late, what that really means is you're asking the wrong question. Like it's too late, guys. Like it is too late. You guys are finally on board with the idea of firing Harbaugh, but bro, we're several years too late. The time to have this conversation was 8 years ago when Lamar was a rookie and the writing was on the wall that we needed to move on and start fresh. But y'all didn't want to do it back then. Y'all didn't want to do it. Y'all said silly things about how, oh, that doesn't make sense. We need to keep some we need to stay, we need a cohesive unit. We don't need to mix things up too much. That can mess up a rookie quarterback's development. Okay. Then when I started saying it in 2020 and 2021, people started saying, well, what are you talking about? You don't know ball, bro. Harbaugh's a Super Bowl winning coach. We're winning all these games. What are you talking about? Okay, okay, okay. And then in 2022, Lamar gets hurt again, right? We already saw in 2021 that he missed the end of the season and we lost every game. But y'all were defending him. Now 2022, we lose every game except one. And, because we won that one, we were able to sneak into the playoffs. We almost had a chance to sneak a win against the Bengals in the wild card. But again, coaching decisions, Harbaugh's refusal to run J.K. Dobbins at the goal line caused us to literally fumble that game away. Tyler Huntley fumbled at the goal line, returned for a touchdown by the Bengals. End of the story. I said even then, hey, we need to move on from Harbaugh. People said, what are you talking about, bro? Our starting quarterback was hurt. A bunch of our players were hurt, bro. You don't know ball, bro. He's a Super Bowl winning coach, bro. Okay. Fine, fair. Okay, fine. All right. Then 2023. Now, all of those previous years I just listed, I could let that go, right? That's fine. I could let that go. Fair enough. I could be like, hey, you know what? Fine. Because another excuse people love to make is, well, if we fire him, who are we gonna replace him with? As if it's hard to find a coach who's gonna lose every fucking game that matters. But people always say, who are we gonna replace him with? They said the same thing with Greg Roman. And I remember specifically saying that, hey man, Greg Roman's not the reason we run the ball so well. If we have Lamar and he's healthy, we'll still be able to run the ball well. We'll still win games. We'll be fine. It's better to try to go find somebody better. That way we could upgrade. But people didn't want to accept that. And then ironically, when they finally cut the cord, we brought in another coach, another OC, who's not even necessarily better, but just slightly better. And what do you know? Poof. Lamar's throwing for more yards than ever, and we still run the ball extremely well. And it's the same thing with Harbaugh, where many people try to say that if we fire him, who else are we gonna hire? And this is to get back to the main point, this is why the 2023 season is the season that stings so hard for me. And it's so painful as a fan because we had a golden opportunity where Harbaugh finally hired a, a coach, a coordinator who truly was good, who truly was elite in Mike Macdonald. Mike Macdonald, in a matter of a few weeks, he struggled the first 5 weeks, but beyond that, he took off and he went to another universe when it comes to his ability as a defensive coordinator. He had a bunch of our average players because most of our defensive roster was mid. But he had all of these guys looking like all pros. Several of those guys got into the Pro Bowl that year who, if we're being honest, talent-wise, they not even all that. But either way, we had a chance, we had a golden opportunity in front of us where we could have transitioned into a new era. We showed that we were right there at the cusp. This was a pivotal moment. We're right there at the cusp of greatness, AFC Championship game. And instead of us taking that risk and saying, hey, you know what? Let's move John out the way, promote Mike. Still, you had Ravens fans say, whoa, you don't know ball, bro. Why would we get rid of John, bro? We just made the AFC Championship game. He's not going to get fired. Why would we fire him, bro? You don't know ball. Okay. And so we let Mike go. And that infuriated me. Now, if you guys remember, I did a very short series at that time after the AFC Championship loss. Just a quick series where I basically said, hey, where do we go from here? Now, part one of that series literally was titled Fire John Harbaugh. And the reason for that, of course, is because I recognized the opportunity in front of us. I said, listen, guys, if we get rid of John now, this team is really good, has potential. Lamar's entering his prime. Let's not squander this. Mike Macdonald has blossomed into a elite DC. We could either go find somebody better as a coach and bring them in, or we could just stick with the guy who's here right now and just promote him. Ravens fans didn't want to get on board. Not all Ravens fans, of course, but a large chunk of Ravens fans, they didn't want to get on board. So we let Mike walk out the door and go to Seattle. And now, you fast forward 2 seasons, Mike Macdonald is doing an excellent job in Seattle with that defense. That defense isn't even all that talented in my opinion. However, Mike Macdonald, like he always does, he works magic. He's bringing the best out of these players and putting them in the best possible positions to maximize what they are good at, which is what a good coach and coordinator is supposed to do. He's doing that. And that defense is balling. He's won 8 out of his 9 first road games as a head coach. Let that sink in. We can't beat Kansas City and Kansas City. We can't beat Buffalo and Buffalo. And meanwhile, with Mike Macdonald in Seattle, they have won 8 of their first 9 road games. He's the first head coach in NFL history to win 8 of his first 9 road games. We could have had that. But again, many Ravens fans, they didn't want to get on board. Now, they're finally on board. But guess what, guys? It's too late. It's too late. It is way too late. It is way too late. In the time that I've had this channel, John Harbaugh has gotten 2 extensions, guys. He has gotten a contract extension on 2 separate occasions. And the Ravens front office, the reason they feel so bold enough to do that is because they know y'all are going to accept it. Y'all are going to tolerate that. Because y'all defend him to the death of y'all. See, now you're finally at a point where you're ready to let him go, but it's too late. They already gave him another 3-year extension. They're not firing him. Yeah, theoretically they could fire him, but they're not going to. They're going to let him ride this 3-year contract out. They gonna let him ride it out. They not gonna pressure him like that. It would take a miracle for them to pressure him like that. They gonna let him ride this out. So if you're in your feelings because Harbaugh is still here, not 8 out of 10 Ravens fans need to blame themselves. Just being honest, they need to blame themselves because y'all refuse to let go of the idea of having this guy as our head coach. And now he's stuck. You can't get rid of him now. So now you're at a point where Ravens fans have lost hope. And that's the saddest place for a fan base to be, especially a fan base that in theory should be in our Super Bowl window. That's the saddest place to be, where fans have lost hope. Because now fans have finally accepted what John is as a coach, which is overrated. They finally accepted that this team has major fundamental flaws. They finally accepted that. And now I'm seeing even some of the most positive, optimistic Ravens fans and content creators, even they've lost faith. They've lost faith in the team. They're no longer picking the team to win. They're just like, man, whatever, man. They've lost faith. They've lost hope. It's not fun. They've lost joy. And that's sad. And in a very shocking turn of events, someone like me, who on many occasions has been a bit pessimistic when it comes to the team, I think I'm one of the few people left who still has some optimism for how this season can play out, because the Ravens front office and coaching staff have traumatized the fans so much. Everybody has pretty much called this season a wrap, and they just saying, you know what, just get rid of everybody, blow it up. I would love for them to do that, obviously, because I'd rather just say screw it and start over. However, I want to put my own desire to the side and think about the actual players on the team and what they have at stake. And because of that, there's a part of me that says, you know what, unfortunately, we can't just throw the season away. I mean, don't get me wrong, if we end up losing anyway and the season's a waste, so be it. But we can't purposely just tank or throw the season away, because there's still a chance to turn this around. And there's a lot of people's legacies at stake here. Lamar's legacy is at stake. Now, John Harbaugh doesn't care. He already got his one ring, and the people in the media, they have no balls, and they don't actually know anything about the Ravens, so they refuse to judge John Harbaugh. And you see this all the time. They walk on eggshells when it's time to critique John Harbaugh. But as soon as Lamar has a bad game, immediately they, as well as the haters out there, they jump on Lamar's neck. But meanwhile, this defense and this coaching staff has been playing like garbage for really the entire season, 4 weeks now. And they're still tippy-toeing around it. They're still walking on eggshells instead of calling it for what it is. But the reality is, as unfair as it is, it's up to Lamar and Derrick Henry and D-Hop, these guys who their legacies are on the line here. It's up to them to win in spite of John Harbaugh. It is. Lamar's legacy is at stake. We all know, obviously, but so is Derrick Henry, right? We got to remember, Derrick Henry is fighting for running backs. We can't forget about that. Derrick Henry is trying to fight against the stigma that running backs fall off and they're no longer valuable once they get past the age of 30. We got to remember, that's an important fight. I know nobody's talking about it like that, but that's still an important fight. Like, Derrick Henry, even many of us as Ravens fans were kind of questioning if he was still going to be productive at this age once he came to us. And he proved that he can be that productive and so much more. He proved that he still has a couple of prime years left in him. So and again, that's an important fight. On top of the fight of him wanting to just solidify a Hall of Fame career by getting a ring, he also, again, he wants to help prove that running backs still have value. This is very important. He has to produce as well. Because right now, the past 3 weeks, he has not put up any numbers because they're not giving him any carries. And that could affect the casual fans' perspective, because if they're not watching the game, they're just assuming, oh, Derrick Henry fell off. They're not realizing this O-line is trash and this play calling is trash, and we're not giving him the ball. Like, guys, under what circumstance is it acceptable for it to be 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 multiple times in this game, and they purposely took Derrick Henry out off the field? That's unacceptable. And then also, like I said, D-Hop, his legacy's on the line too, because he's a wide receiver who has had a rocky career because he's been on bad teams with bad quarterbacks. And even though he's put up good numbers during that time, as time goes on, there's going to be more and more receivers who get 10,000 to 12,000 yards. So if he wants to separate himself and have a better chance at the Hall of Fame, he needs a ring too. Like, people's legacies are at stake here. That's why in the back of my head, I'm just like, well, I can't fully let go of hope that somehow we could turn this around. The best possible thing for us is believe it or not, the best possible thing for us is the fact that this dumpster fire, this collapse is happening early in the season. As crazy as that sounds, this would be the best possible scenario. I'd rather collapse right now compared to collapsing in week 13. Because right now, there's still a chance, not a guarantee, but there's still a chance that within the next couple of games, we could turn this around, not only from a play standpoint, but also from a win-loss standpoint. Because if we could get to the bye week 3-3, we could turn this around for the most part. Doesn't mean that it doesn't guarantee anything, of course, because we got to go play the Texans. Even though on paper they're bad, guess what? On paper we're bad too now. So they're going to be just as hungry to get back into the win column when they play us. So we can't look at that as a gimme, but at the same time, these are all games that can in fact be won. We're not even asking the defense to play lights out like 2023. We're just asking them to play average. If this defense had played, instead of being the 32nd ranked defense, if this defense played like the 15th to 20th defense, at the very least at that level, we still would have won 3 out of our first 4 games. And again, this is what's so frustrating about having a team that has invested so much into this side of the ball, because they're invested into players who are showing you that they really don't have a dog mentality. Like, they really don't want it that badly. You know, I know Kyle Hamilton, he recently apologized for his comments about Ravens fans being spoiled. And, you know, it is what it is. I'm not going to hold it against him, but I will admit there is a part of me in my gut that feels like it wasn't really genuine. I do believe that if the defense had balled out against the Chiefs, I don't think Kyle would have apologized. But that, it is what it is. Regardless, he did apologize. Like, he is a young dude who, clearly wasn't thinking. He was just trying to defend Zach Gore. So it is what it is. More than an apology, we just need him in the defense to actually play. Apologize on the field with your play. Just go out there and actually make some game-changing plays. Because right now, nobody on this defense is actually making a difference. We drafted Malachi Starks with the first round. And speaking of the draft, I don't see. This is why I can't stand people who always want to talk about best player available in the draft. Because these people, in my opinion, these are very stubborn, idiotic people. And I'm not saying best player available is a bad idea, but what I'm saying is you have to read the room. You have to take into context where you are as a team. You have to take that into account and be willing to be flexible. If you're the only times you should have a mindset of best player available, it should be when you are rebuilding or when you are trying to retool your team. Like, if you're trying to tweak your team. So for example, a team like the Dolphins, they're technically not rebuilding. They have an okay amount of pieces, but they still need a lot of help in different places. They're kind of like, they need some tweaking, they need some retooling. That's a team that they need to go with the best player available mentality. Just get whoever you can. Just, it'll work, just go for whoever, right? Another example is a team like the Patriots. They are a dumpster fire they've been a dumpster fire for the past like 5 years. They are completely rebuilding. Completely. They have a complete rebuild going on. In their case, they have to have the mindset of best player available. But if you're a team in a Super Bowl window like the Ravens, having a best player available mindset in the first 2 rounds, remember, when it comes to premium picks in the first 2 rounds, these in theory are supposed to be the best prospects available. When it comes to these premium picks, and if you're a team in a Super Bowl window, you should not have a mindset of best player available. You should have a mindset of like, okay, what is a position of need? Because now you went with Malachi Starks. Allegedly, he was the best player available. What difference has Malachi Starks made on this team so far? None. He's a non-factor. Just like a bunch of the other players on this defense, he is a non-factor. He makes no difference out there. He is just another guy. It is what it is. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Malachi, because I believe maybe in about 2 or 3 years he'll be really good. But as of right now, he's just another guy out there. He doesn't matter. He's not a playmaker. He's not going to make any difference for real. He's not. And this goes back to the issue that I had after the draft. And I tried to remain positive about the draft initially, but we're seeing already that this draft is not aging very well for the most part. It's still early, but for the most part, it's not aging very well. And a big reason for that is because we willingly overlooked a big issue, which was the offensive line. In the first round, you obviously should have drafted a guard or a tackle. We were only 3 picks away from Donovan Jackson being on the board. We could have and should have traded up, gotten Donovan Jackson, put him at guard, and then guess what? If Ronnie gets hurt, which he did this past week, Ronnie got hurt. He didn't even finish this game with the Chiefs because he's hurt. You could have moved Donovan to left tackle, because at Ohio State, he had experience playing tackle because he had to fill in there when Josh Simmons got hurt, and he played at a competent level, which showed he had the potential to be a tackle, on top of the fact that he already had the measurables to do it too. But the Ravens didn't want to do that, and neither did the fans. Well, most of the fans, like 75%. You also had an opportunity to go out there, trade up to go get Gray Zabel, trade up from you. You can't tell me it's not realistic with all these draft picks. You can't tell me it's not realistic to trade up from pick 27 to pick 18. That's not a big jump. That's a small jump. You could have traded up to get Gray Zabel. Gray Zabel is a guy who not only has experience playing guard, but also experience playing center. And if you guys haven't noticed, they didn't pick up Tyler Linderbaum's 5th-year option. And I've been alluding to this for the past couple weeks. I have a strong feeling they're going to let Tyler Linderbaum walk. I don't think they plan on paying Tyler Linderbaum. And if you don't plan on paying him, you need to already have a solid replacement lined up. And they have no plan B. They have no plan B lined up. What you think they're going to do if they let him walk? You think they're going to put Nick Samac in there and have success? Come on, man. Another option, you could have drafted Josh Simmons or Josh Connolly. When we were on the clock at pick 27, both of those guys were there. You could have picked them up. You could have picked up Josh Simmons and put him at guard. And then when Ronnie got hurt this past week, just move him to tackle. That way, not only can he make an immediate impact, but also And also, quick side note: Josh Simmons is playing fairly well for the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are the ones that ended up drafting him. He's playing fairly well. He's won their left tackle. He's won the left tackle battle as a rookie. And not only did he win the battle, but guess what? When you watch this Chiefs offensive line, notice our defensive line, like always, they couldn't create any pressure. Patrick Mahomes was comfortably sitting back there all game. All game, he was just sitting back there. There was only a few occasions where he had to rush. But outside of that, Patrick Mahomes was very comfortable. He might have got sacked, once by Tavius Robinson? That was it. Meanwhile, Lamar was pressured on 48% of his dropbacks. I'm seeing people say, why is Lamar taking such deep dropbacks? He's dropping back 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 45, 80 steps or whatever. But when you have an offensive line this bad, what do you think he's going to do? You think he's going to just take 3 steps back and just trust that these guys can hold up, when they show that even when he takes 10 steps back, they still can't hold up for longer than 1.5 seconds, really less than that, really like 1 second, and they're getting dominated immediately? It is what it is. And even if we're gonna be a team that puts so much into the defense, that wouldn't even be a bad thing if we were picking the right players. But ironically, we're not picking the right players. We're picking players who really have no dog mentality. They simply do not. And that's disheartening, because now, not only is it disheartening because we got to watch these guys get cooked every week, but then it's disheartening because I gotta sit here as a fan and watch half of this fan base try their hardest to not blame this defense. This defense has been awful for the past. Again, guys, Zach Orr took over as the DC last year. We have a 21 game sample size from last year all the way to this year, showing you how, really more than 21, because we had the playoff game, so it's 23. We have a 23 game sample showing you what Zach Orr is as a DC. Out of 23 games, this defense has only looked respectable in 5 out of 23 games. That's it. 5. They've been garbage the rest of the time. And out of those 5 games, it was against mostly bad offenses that have no quarterback. It was against teams like the Browns, who don't have a quarterback and don't have an offense. It was against teams like the Giants last year, who had no offense. It was against the Steelers last year, who, even though the Steelers are a respectable team, they have no offense. They had no offense last year. And people will still try their best to tippy-toe around it and say they don't want to flat out demand more out of this defense. But yet, when it's time to talk about Lamar, you're demanding that he run more. Why run more? Guys, Lamar's not 20 years old anymore, guys. Like, realistically, he's probably not going to have the same energy to run every play like he had back in 2018, guys. Like, it's like he is 8 years older. And not only is he 8 years older, he's also gotten more and more used to just throwing the ball more. So he's going to want to try to wait for one of these receivers or tight ends to get open. But even then, the fact that I'm not going to say nobody, the fact that most Ravens fans don't really demand much out of this defense when they suck, but you're demanding that Lamar be absolutely beyond perfect, that alone shows you that this defense is full of overrated, overpaid players. It doesn't matter how many of y'all get in y'all feelings. Whenever I talk about how overrated Roquan is, I don't care. It doesn't matter how many of y'all get in y'all feelings. Now that I'm going to start saying that, hey, Kyle Hamilton, so far, he ain't living up to that $100 million. It's still early, but hey, when you make a comment like he made, even though he apologized and we can forgive him, now he's putting a bigger magnifying glass on himself, because guess what? You did get your money, so we need $100 million worth of production. We don't need you to just be another guy out there. We need you to be a superstar. You're being paid like a superstar. You're the highest paid at your position ever. Lamar, and this is why this is why me and many Ravens fans do end up feeling bad for Lamar. Because he could play perfect or close to perfect. He could play flawless 99% of the time. And people are still demanding that he give you that extra 1% and be 100% perfect. As if that's possible. But yet this defense, they only give you 20% at best. At best, they give you 20% of what you ask for. And you guys will try your hardest to not call them out. You will be so scared to say that they sucked. These coaches, they'll give you even less. These coaches for the past 10 years have only given us 5% at best. At best, 5%. And still, y'all are too scared. Y'all were too scared for a decade to say fire Harbaugh. And by the time you're finally not scared anymore, it's too late. Harbaugh's not going anywhere. Whether y'all like it or not, you need to get used to the idea of trying to win in spite of Harbaugh. I know that sucks. I know that's unfair. I know that's frustrating. I know that's unfortunate. I know that's unfair to Lamar and Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers. But unfortunately, that's what we got to do. And you know what? In 2012, we had to do the same thing. Because as we all know, in 2012, the players literally had a mutiny against John Harbaugh. That shows you that he already lost the locker room. See, there's reports now saying he lost the locker room. This isn't the first time he's lost the locker room. If players have a mutiny against you, that means not only did he lose the locker room, but that also means that they had to win in spite of him, and they did. So it's possible. Unfortunately, I mean, it's not as likely, but hey, it is still possible. But people's mentality has to change. Right now, a lot of Ravens fans who were super positive and super in favor of everything the Ravens do, now these are the people, ironically, who have lost faith. Whereas in a surprising turn of events, I still have some optimism, mainly because I lost faith in this coaching staff a while ago. My faith, the little bit of optimism I have left, is not based on this coaching staff. It's not based on this front office, because I don't think they're gonna make the right decisions. I don't think they're gonna fire Harbaugh, even though they should. I don't think they're gonna even fire Zach Orr, even though they should. I think they're going to just ride this out because they don't care. The only reason I still have some faith and some optimism is because Lamar is still healthy. He had a hamstring issue in this Chiefs game, but outside of that, Lamar is still healthy. Derrick Henry is still healthy. Zay Flowers is still healthy. So that alone is still not much, but that alone is enough for me to be like, okay, we could still push through this. There's still a pathway to push through this. It's a long shot, unfortunately. It's going to be way harder than it needs to be. But there's still a pathway. But we got to change our perspective, right? A lot of people, the reason they're losing faith is because they were coming from the paradigm of John Harbaugh as a good head coach, and their paradigm has been smashed right before their eyes. But change your perspective. Maybe you could be not a guarantee, but maybe you could be a little more optimistic. Because hey, if we beat the Texans, if we beat the Rams, we go into the bye week 3-3. We have enough time for some people to get healthy. We have a little time to really get our heads back in the game and get locked in. And mathematically, not only do we still have a shot at the division, but we also still have a shot at the 1 seed. As crazy as that sounds, like, we still have a shot. And you never know. What if we go on like a 10-game winning streak? Then it's a different conversation. Still, it's actually no, it's not. It's still the same exact conversation because we've seen this team get hot and then still piss down their leg in the playoffs. So, but it would be a slightly different conversation because you would start to think maybe they have a shot to turn things around. And then from there, hey, anything is possible. But unfortunately, realistically, for us to even have a shot, again, it's not going to be on coaching, even though the coaching is terrible and they need to be accountable. Unfortunately, we're going to need Lamar and Derrick Henry to go on. They're already excellent, but we need them to go. We need these guys, unfortunately, to ascend into another universe when it comes to their production. It sucks that that's the case because we have all these defensive players making all this money, all these draft picks on defense, and none of these guys want to show up. But that may be what's necessary. And as far as the defense, we just need these guys to be average at this point. Now, if they could turn it around and become elite for the next 15 weeks, that's great. But at the very least, we just need them to be average. Because if they were average the first 4 games, we would have been 3-1 right now instead of 1-3. Some of the other things we would need to do to give ourselves a shot at turning this around is you got to get Isaiah Likely back out there. Like, this isn't even debatable anymore. Isaiah Likely is not only a better tight end than Mark Andrews, he's been a better tight end than Mark Andrews for at least 2 years now. You need to get Isaiah back on out there. You only had him out there for a brief period of time. No, Isaiah needs to be starting and he needs the majority of the snaps. Mark is 30 years old, and even though 30 in real life is not old, in sports years, 30 years old, especially when you've had several lower body injuries like Mark, and Mark is clearly slower than ever. And also, to call a spade, he's never been clutch. And on top of that, he has had major. I'll say it like this: Isaiah Likely just has more upside, and he's younger, and he's been more clutch. End of story. We need Pat Ricard out there. That's something the coaches and stuff they can't really control. Hopefully, he gets out there before the bye or right after the bye. Then also we need better play calling. Like, this play calling from Todd Monken is a joke. It's a complete joke. It's a complete joke. No hot routes. There's nowhere for Lamar to go with the ball. Like, you know your offensive line is garbage, and yet you're drawing out these plays that require Lamar to sit back there for 2, 3, 4 seconds instead of making sure that Lamar could have an outlet to just dump the ball off to when things go left. And I just can't understand it. But I've gone on long enough. This shouldn't have been a 40-minute video. This legit should have been like 10 minutes. But either way, let me know. Do you think we could salvage this season? Or do you think that there's just too many red flags and this is just gonna go down as another wasted season?